Welcome back to the channel, guys. So today we have arrived at the point where I need to go ahead and rebuild this jet pump for the 1995 SeaDoo Speedster that we've been working on. If you guys have kept up at all with this project, you'll know that we already rebuilt the starboard side jet pump. And originally I wasn't really planning to rebuild the port side pump, but due to the issues we had with the stator requiring the engine to be removed, and I had to remove this pump anyway, I figured it'd be a great time to just go ahead and get it over with. So today we're going to be going through and fully rebuilding it. I am not doing the wear ring because the wear ring didn't look too bad. So this is just going to be mostly covering, just replacing the bearings and kind of the pump internals. So let's go ahead and get into it. So once you get the pump out of the jet ski, first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and take off this plastic nose cone piece. And that just has 3 8mm bolts that hold it on there. Once you get those bolts out, depending how filthy you like to have everything, you might want to throw on some gloves. I have had this nose cone off pretty recently when I changed or added new oil to it. And it looks like it did flush some out, but there's a lot of water left in there, so it's a good thing we're going ahead and doing this. You can see in here that nice chocolate milk has begun to already mix, so I'm sure those bearings will be very happy that they're getting replaced and that we are completely getting all the water out and fully adding fresh oil. So now that we got that out of there, this is the impeller shaft. So that part right there with the flat sides is what we'll be squeezing in the vise. Flipping it over, you got your impeller. This is where the drive shaft slides in. And so we're going to pull off this rubber boot that goes in here. Set that to the side, and then you've just got your impeller. There are probably some questionable ways you can get this off, like what I did with when I took the other side apart, but what you want really is this tool right here. I think it was like 10, 15 bucks, something like that, and that just slides right in there. And you're going to want to take a 15/16 socket. That'll be what goes on here, but first we'll throw this thing in the vise. More than likely I'm going to need a way bigger ratchet than what I just grabbed right there. That's just in kind of my grab bag toolbox, but we'll see if it works. Kind of have my doubts though. This does go counterclockwise, and it's definitely been off before because from everything I've seen, it takes people a lot more effort to get these off than this. But now you just simply unscrew it. Threads all the way. There you go. This impeller's really not too beat up. There is some kind of chipping on the edge there, but nothing that can't be cleaned up. Get a little bit of use out of it anyway. So something kind of interesting I noticed now that the impeller's out is this seal here is not even pressed in. Not good. It doesn't appear damaged. There's a lot of junk on it, but either way, that definitely was not holding any amount of oil in there. Probably explains why this thing was able to spin so freely too. That seal usually gives it a little more resistance than that. Not to mention, I'm sure the bearings are quite a bit cooked and are allowing it to spin a lot more than it normally should. So now with the pump back on the bench, with my other pump I had to actually kind of knock this out of here, but the shaft, I mean, I'm not even touching it, just holding it right there. It's freely sliding almost all the way out on its own. So that's kind of good, honestly. It means the shaft is not bound up at all, obviously. There's this thrust bearing right here, which we will go ahead and take off. Bearings honestly don't seem bad. And this thing still did spin freely. It wasn't anything like that other pump that was fully locked up. But we will go ahead and change it anyway because the new kit comes with new bearing. This wearing could definitely be changed. I just don't have one on hand at the moment. And it's honestly not so terrible that we'll see how things go with this winter and if I do new pumps. If I end up deciding not to do new pumps, I'll definitely get a wearing for it, but for now, we'll just roll with that. Then back on this side, where that flat thrust bearing was, you also got this washer here, pretty important. So the washer goes up against that brass face, then you got the thrust bearing, and then your shaft runs through it like that to the other side where the impeller screws onto. So we won't keep that flat washer either. The kits come with new ones of those as well. So something I'll just give you guys a heads up on right now. There is a special tool that you can get to press in these new bearings, and basically what it does is set it to the correct depth in there. I don't have that tool, so basically I'm just going to look at where this existing bearing is sitting in this brass, and then I'll just set the other one into the same depth. The one here on the back side sits basically flush with the brass here on the actual impeller side. Now at this point you can try to press these out, or else you can use a punch and knock them out. Once you've finished knocking both bearings out, just make sure to wipe this thing down real good. Get any debris, which there really shouldn't be any, unless your bearing's grenaded or something. And of course, get any water that you can out of there. Now we got our rebuild kit. Comes with O-rings, and then all the bearing components that we need. Bearings and, of course, the thrust washer, thrust bearing, seal. This kit actually came from Ritco products. My other one that I had bought came from All Balls Racing, but they were out of stock at the time when I bought this one, so just went ahead and went with what was available. So really the main thing to note with this kit is, not sure if I can get it to focus here, but on this bearing there are stamped numbers and letters, and you want that facing out. So a lot of people will freeze these bearings and that gets them to slide in a lot easier. I did not do that. Kind of want to go ahead and throw this thing together. So I'm just going to use my press and press them in. What I found works really good is a 13/16 deep socket. It's pretty much the exact diameter of the bearing. So you can go ahead and set that on there. Usually they'll kind of slide in a little bit just to get them started seating. And then you can take and press them in the rest of the way. So we'll get it lined up perfectly. Make sure it's lined up with this shaft perfectly. This press is an absolute, I will say you get absolutely what you pay for when you buy one of these Harbor Freight type presses. The legs, the stabilizers on it are completely uneven, so I don't even have the socket fully straight and it's still pressed super easy. So we'll go ahead and back it off though for the last little bit. Socket is the exact same size as the bore of the pump, as it would turn out, so we'll make sure we get it perfectly lined up. Should be it. And with this side we needed to go a little deeper than flush. which we have achieved. That's what it looks like. We got it all pressed in. Do the other side. Now we've got our new bearings inner pump all ready to go. Only thing left to do is to throw the seal in there, unlike however the last person did it, had their seal. Then take a socket that's bigger around than it, kind of set it around the edge there. You don't want to take a punch or anything to this because you'd destroy it very quickly. Just kind of set it on there. And then seat it in there. You're good to go. That's how it looks. All nice and seated all the way up against the bottom. Bearings roll freely, there's no binding in there. Looking good. Now moving to our impeller shaft, we'll go ahead and take our thrust bearing, slip it on there, throw our thrust washer onto the pump housing. And we'll slide the impeller shaft in there. You'll notice that the shaft turns far less freely than it used to, and in my opinion it's probably because that seal is now in there, which is pretty spooky that we didn't have it before. Now we'll go ahead and set the pump back in the vise. And grab the impeller. Thread it back in there. I'm sure there's a torque spec for it. I'm just going pretty tight. Whatever measurement that you guys think that is. Now, from what I've read, it is still supposed to have this in and out movement, and then when you put this nose cone on there, that takes up the slack. So we're going to go ahead and give the nose cone one last wipe down. I'm going to go ahead and take this old O-ring off. Looks okay, but since the kit came with a new one, we're going to go ahead and use that. No reason not to. Go ahead and install the nose cone, and of course 3 8mm bolts that hold it in there. I would not go too tight with these 8mm because you are going into brass and it will strip for sure. So just get them snugged up. And now you'll notice this does not have any in and out movement. So seated in there good, nice and good. Now realistically all we got to do is slap it in there. I am going to go ahead, since it is out of the boat, I'll go ahead and fill it with oil on the bench, just so I can kind of look for leaks. I'm sure a lot of people are going to have opinions on if you should use a special lower unit oil like you'd use on an outboard typically, or something specific for jet pumps. I personally just use 75W90, 80W90, something along those lines, just a regular gear oil. Haven't had any issues with it yet. And yeah, that's what I use. Just take and fill it into here. When it starts running out, just give it a second. Kind of tilt it back some too. That way it can run back into that cavity. And then, yeah, just keep filling it up. Now that it's all filled up with oil, got the plug thrown back in, everything wiped off. Gonna look at it, make sure there's no leaks coming out. There's not. Since I don't need this right away, I'm gonna go ahead and just leave it sitting out of the boat so I can see if it leaks at all overnight. One other thing is you want to put this kind of dust cover, whatever you want to call it, back into the impeller. And that's it. This kit is kind of a generic one for the 650 pumps. So if you were to have the two fittings here, where you would, if it was a jet ski, it would have an automatic bilge. I think that's what these O-rings are for. In our case, though, what we've got is this one here, which I already threw away the fitting. The plastic fittings that these come with from the factory are absolutely terrible. They basically break before you ever even get the pump out of the ski. So what I like to use, or what I used on the other one, is this new metal fitting, which factory ones are plastic, so this metal one is a lot nicer. And it threads in just the same. Got a nice slot there where you can use a big flathead and kind of screw it into place. So one thing bad about this kit is it did not come with the O-ring that you need for this one, but fortunately I have a spare. So you go ahead and slide it over the fitting. You can see it kind of stands off from the fitting itself. That's what's going to seal it up against the hull. And now we're done. Basically brand new rebuilt pump. We'll let it sit overnight. Make sure it doesn't leak in the morning. And it'll be good to go to put into the ski. That's all I got for this video, guys. Hopefully it helped you guys out. This video is going to apply for pretty much any of your older 90s, probably through early 2000s SeaDoo jet pumps. They really didn't change much. I mean, some of them had plastic on in through here instead of brass. This is the full brass pump. Other than that, though, the concept is really going to be mostly the same. If you guys got any questions, as always, drop them in the comment section. I'm always happy to try to help you guys out as much as I can. And at the same time, there's probably some things that I did that could be refined better and have this done a lot faster and possibly easier. So if you guys got tips that way, make sure to drop those as well. Other than that, we'll see you guys in the next one.